Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Rocket Summer, a BookTube event created by Michael K. Vaughan, designed to celebrate science fiction before the year 1970. Right? I assume that all of the rules have now fallen. It is now the very last few days of July. We are all in the 1960s now, growing our hair out, bell-bottom jeans, make love, not war, painted on our pregnant bellies. So we can talk about anything now. I broke the rules all month long with Rocket Summer. I read all over the month, all over the time periods, instead of going in chronological order. Just yesterday, I did a video on a book from 1904. When I should have left those long behind, I should be only talking about 1960. 1960s, for science fiction, was an incredible watershed decade. This is when major work after major work after major work appeared. And that's what we're doing now until the end of Rocket Summer. So by lucky chance, I did read a book there. I read a book from the 1960s, a classic. This is along the lines of what I've been doing in Rocket Summer in 2024. I've been going back to well-known books that I read maybe once, maybe twice, but a long time ago and fixed an opinion on, and then Rocket Summer made me think, okay, you fixed an opinion on that, but you did it a long time ago. Surely it's time to revise or revisit the book. I've been doing that for pretty much everything that I've read for Rocket Summer this month, and it has been great. Absolutely great. So great that I may continue to do it. I may let that little experiment extend beyond Rocket Summer rather than wait a whole year. But I did that last night. I went back last night to a classic of science fiction by an author I don't like, J.G. Ballard. I read The Drowned World for the first time in a long time. The first thing that I noticed when I was rereading this is that we now live in this world, or we live right on its doorstep. This felt entirely like fiction when I read it originally back in the early 1970s, something like that. It's the story of a post-disaster world, or maybe an in-disaster world. It's a future world in the 22nd century, future Earth in the 22nd century, where the polar ice caps have melted, heat has gone through the roof, and coastal cities, alluvial cities, have been completely drowned. Hence the title. The tops of buildings stick out. There's moss and weeds and tropical jungle everywhere. There are alligators everywhere. There are just iguanas. For some reason, J.G. Ballard has an enormous fixation with iguanas in this book. I would be willing to bet it's because right before he started writing the first draft of this book, he became aware that iguanas exist. I bet that he didn't know about that ahead of time. It seems that way from the book, as he concentrates on them a lot. And it's, as far as we know in the book, that is just a climatological thing that has happened. Not the iguanas, but the drowned world. It's a climatological thing. It might not have been fully predicted, but it's not caused by aliens, as far as we know in the book. I think there were a couple of moments here when I was rereading it where I thought, are you leaving the door open to this being a product of agency rather than chance? But the amazing thing here, the thing that will strike you right away when you read it in 2024, is that this no longer feels like dystopia. This feels like something that's about to happen, something that will certainly happen to your children, who will live not in this kind of a world. The thing that was interesting about rereading this is that Ballard imagines that future world as lush. It might not be compatible with humans, but it's full of water. It's lush and full of potable water. Of plants don't usually drink from. He imagines that if the polar ice caps melt and the temperature on Earth goes up and up and up so that your routine day is 150 degrees, he imagines that will be a lush tropical world. Maybe he's influenced in that by the lingering imaginations of what Venus is like when he was writing this book. Probably that's what, in his mind, he thought Venus was like under its thick cloud cover. The one thing that doesn't seem to occur to him is the thing that we're seeing, which is that when that happens, when the climate changes and the temperatures go up so that every year is the hottest year on record, that's going to cause a lot of dry, not a lot of moisture. It's going to cause a lot of dry. It's going to cause places to burn, not to succumb to foliage. But in this world, at least London has done that. It's mostly underwater. And a team of scientists is in London, led by a guy named Robert Cairns. And they are exploring what's going on here, but they are also being explored. Because they're not just looking at a world that is increasingly fungal and increasingly overgrown and hot and sticky and malarial and tropical. They're not just looking at that world. They're slowly becoming a part of it. It's changing them. It's changing members of his expedition and it's making them less inhibited, more wild, more wayward. It reminded me very much of a much later book that I can't help but view now. Now that I've reread this, I can't help but view it as, in part, an homage. A science fiction novel called The Vor. This reminded me a lot of that personal psychological change that is being wrought in the humans here. And there are lots of other characters as well. There's a beautiful woman named Beatrice who, with Cairns, has a weird oasis in this horrible world. There is an apartment that had some sort of private generator and still has air conditioning. It's still a wonderful little bubble of what all these places used to be like before the world changed. And they love it. They love it so much that they want to stay there. They want to live there, even though they know that's impossible. They know no generator lasts forever. That got me thinking too. That got me thinking of how many post-apocalyptic novels I have read where the author feels compelled to include a little bubble of pre-disaster, a little glimpse of plenty, a little hint of what the world used to be like. I see that when I saw that in this book, when I was reading that part of this book, I was thinking of how many other places I have seen that. Probably the most memorable example for you, those of you who have not yet watched my series of devastating videos tearing the book apart, would be The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which takes place in a desolate world, a ruined world much like this one, where the two characters encounter a bunker full of plenty. Chemical toilets, a working water supply for showering and bathing, tons of food, luxury food, comfortable beds. Many post-apocalyptic novels will give you that. They will give you that little glimpse of the pre-apocalypse world. In Neville Shute's On the Beach, for instance, the little community in Australia is that glimpse of the world. We're living inside that glimpse of the world as the disaster, the apocalypse, gets closer and closer. And I was rereading this, and I was enjoying it. I enjoy J.G. Ballard's prose. It's a lot more beautifully written than I remembered. He just doesn't click with me as an author. And it goes to show you that process of clicking with an author doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the prose of the author. J.G. Ballard actually writes that's another thing that struck me about rereading this, is how wonderfully written it is in a lot of places. And I don't say that about Philip K. Dick, who I retried for Rocket Summer. I don't think his prose is anything. It's just there. It's competent. It's just there. So there you have a complete difference in the quality level of prose, and yet both of them just don't do it for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that combination of tumblers is, but they just don't do it for me. So I was reading this and I was thinking, all right, well, I love post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction. I love it. But the first time I read this, I thought, I don't like that any more than I like anything else I've ever read by this author. So maybe that would change this time, but no, it just sits there. But it got worse. I mean, Ballard doesn't really know what story he's trying to tell here, I don't think. And seedy elements were introduced here. I don't mean to go ad hominem, but I don't think there's any way to read this book and not conclude that it's racist. I don't think there's any way to do that, especially with the introduction of a marauder named Strangeman or Strangman, he himself is white, but he leads a band of black marauders. And they are an implicit threat. They are written about as though they were a brooding weapon. And Strangman and his men don't care about anything. They don't care about scientifically analyzing what has happened to this world. They don't care about preserving anything. They just want to loot it. And when Ballard is writing about that, very often it feels very often like he is implying that Strangman used to be made for better things and came down to the level of his black warriors, his black henchmen, his black fellow looters. And that was uncomfortable enough, but slowly, as the book goes on, the psychological elements of this creepy tropical world start to work on Cairns, the main character. And he starts to become debased. And the text is pretty clear towards the end of the book that that the more debased he becomes, the darker his skin becomes, until he ends up black. Ballard he was a very intelligent author and a very smart man. I've read a lot about him, but I don't think there's any way to read this book you would really have to hurt yourself to twist yourself to read the concluding, say, 70 pages of this book as anything other than Ballard saying that when the world goes to heck and barbarian forces start swarming in, those barbarian forces will be black. They won't look like you and me. He doesn't say that, but that one of his characters, one of the military characters in the book, almost says that. He comes awful close to saying it. You definitely get that impression that this book is that. I definitely got the impression that Ballard didn't think he had any black readers. And maybe that there aren't any black readers anywhere in the world of anything. I don't know. I wasn't comfortable with that at all. I was really impressed by the world building here, and I was really impressed by the prose. But I really didn't like the growing insinuation that the forces of barbarism have black skin. You would think that he himself would see a way out of that kind of stupid reductionism with the character Strangman, who is white, but he doesn't. So I got all kinds of echoes of Heart of Darkness, but or even Moby Dick with Captain Ahab's strange non-human Oriental servants. That part of it just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not sure. I don't actually remember. It's been so long. It might be that element is what turned me off from this book in the first place. But it definitely did the second time. So my next Rocket Summer expedition, one of the last ones, I only have a few days left to do this, was not a success. Ballard is one of those science fiction authors that I know is beloved and revered. Some of his books, often reprinted, that it has never worked for me. Nothing that he's ever done, even when he writes something like historical fiction or World War II, it's never worked for me. And I've always wondered if maybe, I could change that. And I thought maybe I could take advantage of the magic of Rocket Summer to do that. But in this case, it didn't work. So we'll hope for better tonight. I'll throw something else on the pile tonight, and we will see if I have better luck tomorrow. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.